Well, hello. Most organizations say customer experience is strategic and contact center is still usually managed as a cost center. So today I want to talk about what it really takes to close this gap. I'm Richa Devan, and I've led large-scale contact center service and digital transformation inside healthcare and retail organizations. I've advised executive teams on what has to change and not just talk about what needs to change. I have delivered that change myself. So today we're going to cover about 77 sections, not 70, and 40 minutes of content, and we'll leave some time for a Q&A for sure. And my goal is that by the end, you'll have a pretty clear picture of where your organization sits and a practical sense of what to change and where to change it first. So you would want to walk away with three things. One, a definition you can use, a diagnostic you can apply, and then at least one design decision that you can take back to your organization. And let's talk about this for a few minutes. These distinctions that we're talking about are not just semantics, right? They determine what you measure, who you're hiring, what type of technology you're putting in, and who is in that room when executive enterprise decisions are being made. So if your contact center has ever been asked to justify its existence by showing a reduction in cost, that is contact center framing. The question being asked is, how little can this function cost? When the question that should be asked is, what would it cost us if this particular function isn't designed well? A value center, on the other hand, is not a contact center that does more. It's one designed differently right from the start. Its purpose is different. Its accountability is different. And the way it uses data and information and insights is different. And finally, for this conversation, as we talk about customer experience, I'm defining it as the outcome of organizational design. I'm not talking about a score. When your customers experience your organization, they are experiencing the entire cumulative consequence of decisions that are being made in product, in policy, in operations, and in technology. And the contact center is where they land. And it tells you how these decisions landed for your customers. So in this slide, when I talk about why contact centers have structural leverage, the phrase structurally important means the contact center's position in the organization is, as you know, at the end of the customer journey. It gives us structural access to information no other function has. It's not about status, it's not about budget, it's about how information flows relative to where the contact center is sitting. So PwC did some research and it found out that 1 in 3 customers will walk away from a brand they love after sometimes just a single bad experience. And this is not just a satisfaction metric. This shows you retention risk, which shows up in the contact center before it'll show up anywhere else. And as we talk about first contact resolution, SQM Group benchmarks hundreds of contact centers annually, and consistently they have found that for every percentage of improvement in first contact resolution, which, as you all know, means you've solved the problem the first time when they reach out to you, operating costs fall by a similar amount, 1%, and customer satisfaction rises by 1%. So what you're taking away is that FCR, operating costs, and customer centers move together. That's the mechanism. Efficiency and quality are not in opposition when the design is right. So they work together. So let's talk about our legacy model. Contact centers, the current model, or the model that we've often seen and dealt with, came about for good reason. The 60 to 75% figure is a industry benchmark. So when a single cost driver is that dominant, efficiency metrics aren't just a failure of leadership. They're a response to how we've structured this. It's the cost structure. And it's important to acknowledge the people who built this model in what we've been doing isn't wrong, given how we've had and what we've had to work with. So just think about it for a minute. It's not wrong, it's just where we were. And then think about finance, right? When finance owns the framing, the question they're going to ask is, how much does it cost? Not what would it cost us to not have this function designed well? But this reframe is what has to happen. And it has to happen at the leadership level before anything changes. And so now let's talk about technology. And this is something it's worth dwelling on and spending time on, especially today. Historically, the reason contact centers didn't surface patterns as quickly and as effectively is that the technology that we had access to did not support it. Our customer service agents saw what was in front of them, and what they had in front of them was information about one call. They did not have a view of what was behind it, what had happened, what was going on with the customer in aggregate. And that constraint now is gone. The technology is available for us to do it. But what's the question? The question is the organizational design set up to use this technology that we now have access to? So the model made sense, right? And here is why continuing to run it this way will just compound costs, right? Just if we continue to just do what we've always done, costs will go up, not down. So what choices are we making? What are these design choices? And when I say 4 design choices that keep organization paying twice, the title uses paying twice deliberately. Paying twice means the organization is absorbing the cost of the problem in the contact center. How? The handle time, the staffing, the follow-up, and then it reabsorbs it again, because when the upstream cause isn't fixed, isn't identified, we are dealing with it all over again. So the same policy, the confusion, that, let me say differently, the policies or the product design that is confusing the customer is generating calls every time they're using it, or every time a new customer gets it, or every time you enroll a new customer. And the same broken digital journey generates contacts every time a new member joins. And what happens? We in the contact center are handling it every time. And the policy team, the product team, the digital team really never knows, or it's not front and center for them. So let's talk about metrics. Average handle time is not a bad metric. It's a critical metric. But the problem is when it is the primary metric. It tells you how fast people are talking. It doesn't tell you whether the problem was solved, will the customer call us again, and nor does it tell us what did we learn from that call that should change how the organization operates, how the product is designed. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about the systems. This is a technology problem, like I said earlier, that can now be solved. It's solvable. And current technology, if designed right, gives agent full customer context. And what blocks it? What blocks is not always budget, it is prioritization. Is the organization prioritizing technology that is needed for customer centers? So Question for you. Which of these four exist in your organization? In most rooms I end up in most conversations I'm seeing, some version or the other of all four exist. And so you have to ask, what is this costing us? Which one is costing us the most? Are all of them problems for us? So let's move on. What does value center design actually mean? There are three jobs, and these are not sequential. You cannot, you cannot do job one if job two is broken, but you also cannot claim to be a contact center if you're only doing one job. So most contact centers are stuck at job one, which is resolve current demand. Some of them are doing job two, which is reducing future demand. But very few have built the organizational design and infrastructure to do job three consistently, which is surface root cause problems constantly, consistently to the organization. So when we talk about reducing future demand, that does not mean discouraging customers from calling us or contacting us. It means find out why. Why are they reaching out? And then eliminating the cause if you can. If 30,000 of your customers are calling you every month about the same billing confusion, the value center response is to figure out and to work with the organization to fix that billing communication, not to handle 30,000 calls faster and more efficiently, right? So when you are surfacing root causes to the organization, this requires something specific. The contact center has to get to the right people and not just provide a report that sits in a dashboard somewhere that nobody gets to read. They provide it as evidence that enters decision making. It requires a cross-functional governance structure in a leadership decision. So as we think about each of these on all four dimensions, right? The operating design, the process, the governance, the leadership posture, the tech, the data, each of these are a design choice. They're not a technology purchase. You can buy a CRM and still run like a cost center. The intent, the design intent has to come first. The technology enables it only when our intent and our strategy and our approach is clear. So as we talk about the next slide, we're going to get into technology and how it specifically enables each one of these four dimensions that I've just referenced. And I want to leave you with something concrete if I can. On the slide, I set up the slide earlier, and I want to be clear about what this slide is and what it's not. This is not your tech shopping list. Every tool here exists to enable a design decision that has been made. And if you've not made that design decision, the strategy decision about how to place and design your contact center and how to position it as a value center, the tool will not save you. A CRM does not make you a value center. The decision to use it to give your agents full member contacts and then to hold people in the organization accountable for acting on what they see, that is what makes the value center. The technology just makes it possible. So we'll go through this top down and let's talk about resolving current demand. Huge deal, right? There are three tools I want to just touch here. One, knowledge management. Answers-based knowledge management is totally different than a document library. A lot of us have used tools where they were pulling up PDFs, searching through emails in some cases, or even sticky notes. But here you're getting answers, and the distinction matters. When an agent searches, for example, returns or prior authorization or appeals in a traditional knowledge base, they might get a policy PDF, a training document that's dated perhaps, and a process article that was updated when the system was changed. And they spend 90 seconds looking for it, putting the client on hold. But in an answers-based system, which is usually an LLM tool or a generative AI tool that your client, that your company can get access to, there's something very different. They ensure that when they type the question, they get a verified answer and the steps. The difference could be seconds per call, minutes per call, but think about what it does for them. It's a big deal. And like I said earlier, it drove handle time reduction for us in the past. We're not pushing agents to move faster. What we're trying to do is remove friction, remove the time spent searching, get them what they need up front. A 360-degree member view through a CRM that is connected. The value here is not efficiency, it is resolution quality. Because if a member can see an agent has called 3 times this month about the same issue, they know this is an unhappy member right off the front bat. They are better positioned to resolve it, to flag it as a pattern, to escalate it, and really advocate for the customer who's calling. And then in the future, potentially prevent hundreds of people from experiencing the same problem, because your CRM is capturing this data even if your agent isn't. And that is the bridge between getting from job 1 that I talked about to job 3, which is when you are able to take a problem and push it forward. You cannot get there if the agent is working from a queue view, a task view, not a member history, a member 360. Omni-channel routing. Customers want to reach us where they want to reach us, when they reach us. And this seems obvious, right? Most organizations have multiple channels, but they are not omni-channel. And so when a member calls, then emails, then chats, each interaction, they're starting from 0. There's no context. The agent on the chat often doesn't have the visibility. And so the member's explaining themselves, and the agent is just trying to take notes and talk all at the same time, and sometimes with multiple people. So what we're trying to do is make sure that through your tools and your technology, that the members or the customer's view is clear, the history is clear, and you reduce the cognitive load for the agent in searching. Moving on to how do we reduce feature demand? All right, critical. Three ways. And of course, there are many more. These are 3 I'm offering you. Interaction analysis and contact reason tagging. This is so important. If you use intelligent data, you use speech, text, and sentiment analysis, and you are able to tag not just the single reason, but the multiple reasons a client is calling. You now have view and access. Without systematic tagging, you don't know how many calls you got. But with it, you have specificity and ability to do root cause analysis. You can now see you are getting, I'm making numbers up, 12% of your contacts last month were about the same type of claim status issue or were about the same type of return problem. You can quantify it. They're calling because the same widget, the same thing didn't work. And now you can take it back to the product team with numbers attached. And then a closed loop voice of the customer. The key word here is closed loop. Customers are, many times we are getting post-contact survey data from customers, but very rarely are we able to close the loop, which means when someone who is looking at the results can identify what failed and how this information gets back to the team. Post-contact surveys should be tied to interaction types, not just tell you, am I happy or not? That's good, but what else? What part of the experience caused issue? So if you can understand why somebody was happy, why somebody was sad, because it's tagged to the interaction, that is what is actionable. A general CSAT score is not actionable in itself. So moving on to demand and forecasting with root cause overlay. And this can be a sophisticated tool. Lots of contact centers as a service and workforce management tools are starting to offer this. And this is such a sophisticated tool, and one that is hard to implement. The basic one is you're tagging contact center volume, you're seeing spikes, but with this tool now, you're able to tag those spikes to upstream causes. Some policy change went out, some spike happened after that policy change went out. And now you can connect these two data points consistently, and then you can start predicting contact volume. And this changes the conversation. So keep an eye out for these workforce management tools that are integrated into the data and then can use artificial intelligence, deep analytics to give you better insight about what is changing where. Finally, let's talk about surfacing root causes. On executive reporting on contact drivers, right? A weekly, monthly report showing top contact reasons routed to product, policy, and digital readers, not just to the contact center team, is critical. You make this a cross-functional enterprise report. And it sounds simple, but it's organizationally tricky. It requires somebody's building it, somebody owns the distribution, and leadership expectation that is set that when somebody receives it, they act on it. And without that expectation, that report sits unread. The technical part, easy. You already have it. The governance and leadership is the work. The cross-functional ownership, right? This is the governance structure that makes root cause fixing somebody's job. Once you identify a problem which is recurring, you assign it to the team that owns the upstream issue, whether it's the portal team, whether it's the policy team, the product team. They have accountability, and that's what customer experience root cause analysis should do. Without this structure, issues get identified, but nothing happens. And the contact center keeps absorbing the cost. And with it, you start to actually reduce future demand because you're going to lose your customer. The last part, sentiment and risk flagging. AI-assisted tagging of contacts that indicate member risk, compliance exposure, or patterns, right? Next best action is becoming prevalent. It requires clean data. It requires a good understanding of what processes we're going to have. And, you know, in our industry, in my industry, in healthcare, which is complex and, you know, has lots of compliance, this has real stake. A member who keeps calling us, expresses frustration, isn't just a retention risk. At some point, it becomes and could become a regulatory risk. And catching that pattern becomes very critical, because if we start seeing a lot of appeals, a lot of complaints, it also then further impacts revenue for us from the government, from the premiums we receive. And this is where value sits, catching that pattern early. This is what I call the early warning sign capability. And very often contact centers are not using it. So big slide, lots of information, take it, absorb it, work through it and see what you have and what you don't. So I wanted to share a case study with you. And this is, you know, what was going on is our environment wasn't a greenfield build, right? We had legacy systems like you all have. We had regulatory or compliance constraints. And we had a workforce and a leadership team that had been told for years that efficiency was the job. Nothing here was easy to change. So what did we do? We started thinking about it really thoughtfully. We leveraged design thinking to make sure we understood the member journey, and we understood the service blueprint, which means we're understanding not just the journey, but what systems are used during the journey, who are the people involved with the journey, so that when you do find a problem with that step, you know where to go to. And so we mapped out, we found several issues, but one of the issues we found, which was really, you're going to see this, is that members, there was a category that they selected, when we were looking at this and they're on the IVR, we're not just seeing what categories they selected. We saw that we were seeing, irrespective of category they selected, there were some recurring issues that were driving a disproportionate share of our contacts. Members were calling 4 times to get a status update because guess what? Our portal did not show that update. So we were their only source. Members were confused by some of the language that they got in their welcome kit when they joined our company. And so when they went to the digital portal or the member portal or the customer portal, and they found that, you're saying A and B, that sparked a phone call, that sparked a chat. And these aren't agent problems. These are digital decisions that were made, which were disconnected. These were policy issues. And what was happening is the contact center was absorbing the cost of the decisions and the disconnect elsewhere in the organization. Our knowledge management, which I talked about, we saw that agents couldn't find answers fast enough. They were not answering more calls. They were spending time because we were able to offer a answers-based knowledge system. They were spending less time looking for solutions and not looking for the information. So this is a technology enablement change and not a staffing change. And finally, leadership repositioning. Hardest thing, because it required us to convince the executive team that contact center leadership belongs in the room. It doesn't happen through a project. It happens because there is a leadership acknowledgement of how critical the contact center is, because they are delivering value through insight. They are where we're seeing the customers call us, and we have more insight talking to our customers, our members, than anybody else has. There's more time spent on the phone, on chats, on emails than anybody else does. So what does efficiency and experience improvement look when they work together? So 2 organizations, neither required choosing between efficiency and experience, and each number here comes from changing the overall ecosystem from what the system was designed to do. And so for a regional healthcare organization, we saw efficiency gains that came from applying design thinking, a cohesive approach of how all people, process, and tech had to come working together, not just from cutting headcount. We were able to reduce $10 million in annual operating cost. And that came from simplifying the fragmented technology ecosystem that had grown so complex that we didn't have a view of the customer. We did not have the right knowledge-based information. We didn't have the right type of people. And we saw an improvement in first contact resolutions. Lower contacts means lower repeat contacts. And with multi-million annual contacts, this was a material reduction. It came from working closely cross-functionally, not just within our organization, but also with external partners like our BPOs to make sure they were part of the process as well. Our agents were thrilled. We saw an increase in agent CSAT. And that tells you something important. When the agents have the tool and they're empowered and they have the context to do and resolve the situation, their experience improves as well. And that's meaningful because it will result in lower attrition for the contact centers. And we all know that has been a challenge. For the digital health platform, we noticed that a 5% average handle time and escalation reduction came from an AI-powered knowledge tool that gave answers quickly and directly instead of documents to search through. Instead of having to find what is correct, what is dated, it gave them contextual, accurate, compliant information that they had learned to trust. We also took the time to leverage AI to increase how quickly or faster time to hire, right? We were able to go up 20%. And this is relevant here because workforce quality and stability affects resolution. You cannot build a value center on a workforce that is understaffed, that is constantly turning over, that doesn't have the right, that doesn't feel heard. The empowerment is important. You equip, you empower to evolve. And none of these numbers are unrelated. They're consequences of an operating design decision. Build the system and the governance and the leadership team to resolve well, to resolve the first time, surface what it learns, and then use that to reduce what comes next. And this isn't just something that only applies to healthcare, right? This is a structural problem, i.e., a contact center is absorbing the cost that originated upstream, and with no mechanism for routing that intelligence back to the people who could fix it. I've seen this across industries. The details can change, but the mechanism is sound. In retail, for example, a shipping carrier change happens and you'll see contact spike. And guess what? The contact center sees it immediately. The fulfillment team may not find out till much later. You've got to build in that feedback loop. In financial services, a rate change goes out and say agents aren't briefed on how to explain it. Members call, agents can't answer, and it'll happen every time. It is predictable. And if we don't flag them, if we don't understand the impact of the change in the policy, and we haven't thought through how to support the agents with the right content, the right knowledge, and we haven't thought about it early, the change won't happen. And the next time the change goes out, once again, the contact center will see a spike and it'll cost us money. Utilities and telecom. You may see billing discrepancies between paper statements or online statements, and your portals don't make sense, and the fix becomes a portal reconciliation project. Pardon my pronunciation there. It's a product or an IT work, right? But the contact center alone can't fix it. However, we can escalate it. We can bring it to their attention. We, the contact center, have to make sure that if we see a problem, we have found the mechanism to escalate it and allow and hold others accountable to act on it. Forrester's 2024 CX Index said that companies that don't prioritize customer experience see a 41%, companies that do prioritize customer experience. You can ignore what I said earlier, customer experience that is prioritized. They see 41% faster revenue growth and 49% faster profit growth. The contact center has the most direct real-time visibility into where the experience is breaking down. And the question is whether the organization is designed to use it. So I would love to give you a practical way to read your own organization against this, understand your environment, so we can move on to the next slide. I want you to take a minute and I want you to score your organization right now, how it is today, not what you aspirationally want to do, your honest read of what is actually true. Business case built on cost reduction only. This is the hardest one to change because it requires you to be able to build new measurement capabilities. You don't need a perfect model. Take a sample of last month's contacts. Tag which represent customers who are at risk of leaving, or escalations you have avoided, or upstream failures that you detected. This sample will give you a proxy value estimate. Even a rough estimate, when you make it visible, it changes the conversation. So go take a look at your agent ticket history, right? Without member context. This one is tied directly to technology. If your agents are working from a queue view, your FCR rate will be impacted. And so it will require a CRM investment and an implementation decision. But like I said earlier, design intent has to come first. So my question to you as you go through the slide, what signal on the left is your most urgent constraint? And start there. Can't boil the ocean all the time, but start there. Start making the problems visible and make sure you can clearly articulate to your leaders how you become a value center. You become a value center if your resolution is going to be tracked as importantly as your efficiency. You are going to be a regular agent and you're going to give them access to how they can possibly escalate, give them the power to take action. Make sure the reports goes to product teams and digital leaders, not just the contact center leaders. Contact center leaders attend product teams and portfolio reviews because they bring insight. The customer experience team has access to these as well. You are best friends. Make sure you go forth with it. Agents have a full view and they are enabled with this 360-degree view, and they are enabled and they are empowered to escalate. The business case for contact center investment is retention value, downstream cost prevention, even if it's modeled conservatively. So, 3 questions that I want you to take time with. And on question 1, if the honest answer is, I don't know what it would cost us in revenue and retention, that tells you something. It tells you something about how the function is valued. The cost side of the contact center is well known. The value side, what it protects, what it generates, what it prevents, is often invisible. And making that visible starts with asking the question, what would it cost the organization if the contact center stopped working for 48 hours? Question 2. I have asked this in rooms full of senior operations leaders, and they do have a response. And sometimes the response is, we have a VOC program. A VOC program is critical, very important, but it's not the same as having contact center intelligence shaping product decisions. The distinction becomes who acts on it and how fast. So think about, when did contact center data change a product, policy, or digital decision? And is that happening consistently? Third, I think this is the hardest one. From your top 3 contact center types, think about what is causing them. Who owns it outside the contact center to fix it? And ownership is the hardest part. Repeat contact center reasons are usually known. Root cause analysis? Not always. What almost never exists consistently is cross-functional accountability, a structure that assigns ownership of root cause fixes to the team, and what makes it solve the upstream problem. What was the upstream problem that caused it? And are you fixing it? And that's the gap. That is where the value sits. So, 5 things that are true regardless of your industry or scale. Take these away with you. Take some time to tell me what resonates for you. And if there's something you want to ask, please do so. This, full resolution reduces cost and experience. It's so critical. Our volume is evidence of what is not working. Our leaders need to make design decisions about how we operate and where the contact center sits. Technology enables context, and context changes resolution quality. So important. And this principle for contact centers, the ones I've shared, go across industries. So the specific mechanisms may differ, but the structural problem is the same. Contact centers absorb the cost that started somewhere else. And the organization needs to make sure that contact center intelligence is hard so they can use it to design and eliminate the upstream root cause. I would say the contact center is not a cost to minimize. It is a critical part of the organization with structural access to information no other function has. No other function. When you design it to use that position, you do not have to choose between efficiency and value. You get both. I'm happy to take questions on any of this, including parts you found hard to apply in your organizations of something that doesn't make sense here. Thank you again for your time today. And I hope we connect soon. Find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you.